Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast on enterprise analysis using VS Code. I'm your host, Mark O'Brien, Director at CM First Group. We at CM First are back from the recent Share Conference in Ohio. We've got a lot to talk about, including the latest insight about mainframe analysis, as well as a technical briefing and demonstration. If you're familiar with our webcasts, you'll know that John Rhodes is one of our speakers today. He's our CIO. He'll do some introductory remarks on analysis and then turn it over to Roger Hammer, our Director of Software Development Services, for the technical briefing and demonstration. So if you've been on our webcast before, you know we like to have several questions. So the first one's going to be, what are your views on Git software? So I bring up a poll. So please select one of the following answers. Is it implemented in production, or we're trying Git out, we're looking into it, we plan to evaluate, or it's not on the radar at present? And what do our responses look like?
Let's take a look.
So implemented production and trying it out actually gets 80% of our respondents. So that's good for Git. And then for 20% of you, it's not on the radar. So Git has been around actually for 17 years. As you know, Linus Torvalds introduced it. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to John, who's going to give you some more insight into mainframe analysis. And take it away, John.
All right, thanks, Mark. Yeah, excited to be here. So today we're going to talk about some of the problems that are out there with enterprise analysis. I'm talking about analysis of large systems running on the mainframe, also the IBM I. And we do have a solution for it, though. Fortunately, it's static analysis. We'll be going through some of that, showing you a nice demo of how that all works, how it scans your code, parses it, and then produces some analysis that lets you make short work of a lot of your analysis tasks. Then do a demonstration and show off our newest integration, which is VS Code. VS Code is really the #1 integrated text editor out there these days, and it's making some good inroads in the mainframe and on IBM I. So we'll take a look at that and talk some other features. We've added some things like Git integration to our product recently. Roger will be going through that, and then take your questions. If you have any questions at any time, just please type them into the question app in your GoToWebinar console, and we'll address those at the end. Okay, let's get right into it then. For those of you who don't know our company, we're CM First Group. We're headquartered in Austin, Texas in the USA. We have an office over in France, as well as development centers in Central America and Vietnam. We're partnered heavily with CA Technologies, or Broadcom as they're known by now. Also IBM and other folks in the enterprise space. And we work with companies around the world. We're all about providing technology and services to provide the most reliable, rapid, and cost-effective methods really to optimize and transform enterprise applications. IBM Z or IBM I. Types of challenges out there, two classes of it. A lot of people have both in their organizations, but one is maintaining these large applications. You have a large mainframe application or IBM I. A lot of times we're talking tens of millions of lines of code out there. So that's really a challenge to get your hands around that, to maintain that, to make changes to it, enhance it, and keep the lights on running. At the same time, people are always looking to modernize. That means a lot of different things. Modernizing could be modernizing your DevOps process, okay, to get perhaps implementing CI/CD. It could also mean modernizing the front end with web services or web applications, or in some cases even changing code bases. So some people are looking to move maybe from COBOL to other languages, for example. So we try to help both classes of organizations with our products. And really, it's around making development more productive, really reducing costs. That's what it comes down to. 90% of most IT budgets are around maintaining current applications. If we can change the dynamic there, maybe move the percentage down to 60 or 70%, that gives you an extra 30% to apply to making system enhancements, to doing new things around the organization. So we do that by helping you automatically create project and system documentation. We help you trace data flows across program database boundaries, and we do a lot of other things in addition to that. So what do Mainframe and also IBM developers want? Well, one thing is it's very tedious to scan source with text search. Okay? It's also very tedious to build documentation. In fact, we find that most organizations don't do a good job of that. It's just, it always gets to be kind of last on the priority list. And really, people don't want to spend time analyzing source code. They want to spend more time creating enhancements and putting new things into production, right? So we hear a lot of quotes like this, that maybe I'm training new folks. I want to hand off what I know and not have to tell the developer everything about the application I built over the last 40 years. Because for one thing, maybe you've only been involved the last 20 years. You don't even know what the first 20 years were. So we're going to show you a way that you can automatically create this documentation simply and not have to maintain it, and use that as a mechanism to educate new teams, new developers on how your system works, and let them be productive, a lot quicker than it would be without a tool like this. Okay, so that was some background on what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to turn things over to Roger for a demonstration in a minute. But first, let's go and look about and look at our next poll question. And if you're on the Mainframe platform, IBM Z, you probably have heard of Zowe. It's in the Open Mainframe project. That's a open source movement, heavily supported by Broadcom and IBM, to make the mainframe accessible, the REST APIs and other techniques that people can actually maintain and control your mainframe from external to the mainframe. So it's a pretty neat idea. With that, there's a lot of VS Code extensions too. So curious what people's views are on Zowe and the Open Mainframe project, and let's see what you have to say about it. Kind of the same questions we had before. Have you implemented in production? Are you trying it out? Are you looking into it, maybe attending Share and going to some of the sessions there on Zowe, or some of the online programs out there? I think there's a conference coming up end of September that you can attend online. Or maybe you're just thinking about looking into it. As we say in Texas, that means we're fixing to do something. I'm sure it translates to everywhere in the world. That's what we say down here. Okay, let's see what we got for this poll. It looks like, well, we got some people that have put it in production. That's great. They're trying it out. Is certainly the majority, or between the first two, we got 40%. 20% looking into it. No one's fixed to look into it, probably because they don't know what that exactly means. And 40% not on the radar yet. Okay, so that's interesting. But it looks like, more than half are thinking about it, at least, if not gone much further than that. Okay, I'm going to turn things over to you, Roger.
Okay, let's get to a few more slides, not too many. I'm going to start out with just a little bit of background on kind of Evolve AT and the ecosystem it's a part of here. Evolve AT obviously starts with your source code. And so we're doing source code impact analysis. So we're bringing source code in. As John mentioned, we have a tool to bring it in from Git. We also have approaches to bring it in, obviously, from some of the legacy approaches to managing source code. And so as that source code comes in, it runs through a parsing process, builds the metadata that we need for our users to interact with through the web user interface that we're going to look at today. It's going to provide component connectivity. It's going to help you build specifications and documentation throughout your process, whether that's for, I know a lot of customers as they get toward the end of the year start planning projects for the following year, and good documentation and impact analysis to make sure those projects are well planned and the decisions at the high levels have the information they need to make good decisions about which projects can be accomplished next year are always very important. And your day-to-day analysis as you're doing work, you know, beginning new projects or just answering a question for somebody in operations about some data or how something gets calculated in the application. And we'll go through a number of these different types of analysis that you can work on. So a few use cases we're going to cover today in our portfolio dashboard. We're going to talk a little bit about the overall application, including the asset browser. We're going to do some top-down impact analysis from JCL. We're going to identify some table and column usage, that bottom-up approach. And we're going to do, we have an elastic search that we've added recently into CM Evolve AT, so we can look at where things can be found within source code. And what's nice is you can actually diagram directly from that process. You'll also see a new table view for the relationships within CM Evolve AT. So you can show the diagrams. You can also look at everything in a table view. And then lastly, we're going to dig into the data flow impact using our data lineage functionality. Okay, let's get into it. All right, so what you're seeing here is the top level dashboard. We're providing a few statistics, metrics about your application. You can see we have total program count, we have complexity information, and you'll see some of these numbers relate to change. And so you can see we're providing trend information for how that source code was added into your database over time. And so you may get things like new programs or new copybooks and information like that. So as we move into some of the statistics, we provide this nice pie chart just showing you a comparison of all the different types of components, including files, copybooks, map sets, all the different components you may have. And then of course we actually have the metrics, so you can drill down into each program and look at the difficulty, complexity, and volume information for every single program in your application. Lastly, we provide this view that kind of gives you an idea of the overall application. We call it the complexity quintile. So it's 5 buckets that show you within your application the complexity. How much of your application is in the low range of complexity, how much is in the high range, and a few of those ranges in between. So you get a sense of how overall complexity metrics show up in your application. All right, let's move into the asset browser now. There's a number of different assets and more coming, I will say, as we'll talk about a little bit later, that you can analyze in CM Evolve AT. We've got JCL, obviously all the JCL related components, procs, steps, and of course application programs and copybooks, farm cards, of course part of the JCL, and then all the database functionality, database, table, column information, all the way down to your CICS map sets and screens. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got this elastic search capability we're going to talk about. We've got also data lineage, and data lineage is going to be very powerful to show you how data flows across your application. So let's start out with some JCL, and I've recently searched some information, so I'm going to just bring up the initial information here. And so we're going to look at what's related to this particular JCL, and we see some standard functionality, IBE Generator, also a couple of 3 programs, sort. So we've got all this functionality at that are related. But let's look at a call graph. And so quickly I can press a button and get a view. I'm going to change to vertical here so we can see the relationship. So we have job procs that are being used by the programs and by the JCL, and also the program. So as we begin this kind of analysis on the JCL and its calling structure, we can begin to understand what else is being accessed below these levels. So we have a choice. We can either add everything at different levels, just the directly called, or different levels deeper in the call chain, or we can actually select which type of component we want to add. So we can add programs that are called by this program. We see that there are 7 available. We can look at the copybooks, external files. I'm going to select some programs at this point, and these are IO programs, so we'll just add a few of them in there. And we see that now we've got a view of which programs are used and called by this particular program. So you can begin to build out the documentation you need. So, consider, what your normal process would be. You're doing JCL, you may want to drill down into the source code, but you also want to understand how does or where and what applications does this JCL execute, and then what other programs are actually being run by those top level programs. And so getting that information, you can see, is very quick and easy. It's very deterministic. This has been parsed just like a compiler compiles your code, so you're getting 100% correct answers. All right, while I'm here, I have a couple of other options. I can do things like highlighting certain nodes or removing nodes that I've highlighted. I can save my diagram, for example. Let me just save this. So I can save it. I can add a few notes there if I want a description. And so I've got it saved. And now once I come back up here, I've got all the different diagrams, and you can see Roger's diagram here. So I can always delete it if I'm ready to do that. I can open it back up and get a view. So right now I'm getting a view of the kind of the graphic view of these relationships. But I can also, just with a quick click of a mouse, I can go to table view. Really powerful, particularly if you have a lot of components, rather than looking at a large diagram and trying to size it and all those kinds of things. It's easier many times to look at this view with the table. And you can see we have those relationships here easily seen. JCL calls job procs, also JCL calls program. So we've got all the relationships you need within the table view. All right, going back, what I want to do next is let's do a view on copybooks. Let's take a look at, there's 30 copybooks within this particular program. And so we're going to pick one of these, and we'll go ahead and add it. But we'll also, now we'll look at, okay, what are the other programs? So what programs are you using that copybook? So I've got a long list here. I can add them to my diagram, but I can just look through this list and identify, if I'm making a change within that copybook, what other programs am I going to need to consider for that change? And we can see the full list here that are being used. Okay, let's go back now to our top level. And I'm going to move, actually, I'm going to skip over some things and come back to more the asset browser a little bit later. And I'm going to do, this is a pure text search. It does have regular expression ability. I'm going to do just a very simple search, and I'm going to do it on, let me do it on everything. And let's just run that search. Okay, so we see this loan amount field. And let's go ahead and sort this. So we've got a couple of copybooks. We can see a little icon showing a book, and we've got a gear showing work getting done in a program. So all we have to do is expand, and we see exactly where that information is. Click the little eye, and we see where is that within the copybook. We can see all of these results within each of these copybooks and programs, and we can jump right to the line item where it's being used. So we have really quick access. You can also search within the resulting source code view for that program or copybook. So very quick access to the results. These are not going to be, scanning for minutes or an hour to find your information. Wait and then come back and look at it, and you're going to get immediate results. And now you've got these direct access to the locations where this, in this case, loan amount was found. But one step further, right? So we also have the ability here to do a full impact visually still. And so again, I'm opening up, and I'm going to go ahead and just open up a shallow view here. You can see there's quite a few items in the view. Let me go to my vertical view again. I tend to like that. Some people like the horizontal view. But we can see what looks like kind of a little bit of a cascade. Calls here, a couple levels of calls, another level with its subcalls, and we continue down the path. So we get a lot of information in a single diagram. We can zoom in. We also have the ability here to work throughout a large diagram. So if I want to, zoom this in, and I have the ability to work around and say, okay, where is the information? But in addition, I have a list of all of the components that are in this diagram. So if I'm interested in a single component, I can search for it, or I can scroll and identify and say, okay, I want that component view. It's going to bring it right to center for you. Again, once you've built the diagram you want, then you've got export options. You can export this as JSON, CSV, Excel, PDF, or maybe even Draw.io. Draw.io is a tool that you can use to actually modify these diagrams, and maybe you want to remove a few things or add some other information from another system or interface. There's a number of areas we can actually merge different graphs, adjust the layout. Again, we mentioned this before. We can export the diagram, save it, and all those options are available with all of our diagrams. All right, I think that's a really good view of the ability to search, find the information you're looking for, and drill down. Look at how do these components, where you find the data that you're looking for, are a part of your overall application. All right, let's move on. We're going to look at a view of this 135 program, which I actually had here. So we'll go ahead and look at it again. And we can add both the top level. So we see, interestingly, there are 4 different JCLs calling this. And then if we add the shallow, we're going to see quite a few components. Let me do it this way. Let me just add a few things that I want to see, since there's 25 programs. So I want to see some of the other functionality outside of the IO. So a lot of these you can see are labeled as IO. A lot of the IO in this application set are kind of built into particular programs that accomplish the IO. I'm going to pick some of the other programs here, and now I've got a really nice view of JCL that are executing this program and the sub-programs that are doing some of the work. Once I'm here, I've also got the ability to see some information about this component, and then I can actually open up source code. So, rather than searching across the entire application, you've got the ability to look at both the original source, searching within that source, whatever is needed, you can get to it. but also this is an expanded view. So this has got a view of all of the copybooks included. So if you want to see more of a runtime view of this program and search within it, read the source code, you have that ability right here and quickly accessible. All right, close that out. Same thing for JCL, obviously all the different components. Okay, we've covered copybook and looking kind of both down and up. So to wrap up, I want to look at our data lineage capability here. Data lineage starts with what we call a field search. So any field, any column name, any of those can be searched. So we create a search with a field or a list of fields, and we let that search run in the background. We don't have to wait on it. We don't have to do any work. It runs across the application, finding all of the different components where that field is used and identifying that information. Once we have that information, we can create a project and then run the data lineage process again in the background. We let it run, and when it's finished, we get a project view here with the results for the different fields that were run within the project. I'm going to continue to focus in on this loan amount field, and we have a result here. Again, we always use a little I for showing the information, and we get a nice view of this field. I'll zoom in a little bit. So right in the middle is the field we completed the search on. You can see all of the lines showing whether this was read, or excuse me, in this case, written to, in this case, a file. In this case, there's a couple different rights to a record, all the different information, program, how it relates to all the different components. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm interested in where this field is used across the application. And so I'm going to focus in on a particular diagram here showing how this field is used. And what you're going to see here that's interesting beyond what you may see anywhere else is the ability to trace this data across the application, across multiple components. And so we've got our field. We see that it's a part of a couple levels of records, the record levels within the application. And then we see it's a part of a write statement. And of course, it's actually being written as the whole group that's being written out. That's being written to a file called an extract file. And we transition now to another program and where the reads are happening. We're seeing these reads, how the reads, again, are passed into record information at a couple of levels. So we know the full record levels where we find this field, and it's written in, and then it's being used. Here's the actual field, and that's actually getting used. It's being moved into another field, and then it's actually going out. This particular functionality is related to writing out letters, and so it's using the documerge in order to do that. So again, very powerful functionality. You know, if you're traversing, you know, a number of programs, you're going to see all of those within the results here, with the ability to quickly understand how that field is moving throughout your application. So I'm sure you're imagining and seeing all the possible ways that this would benefit you and your teams as you do work on the mainframe. All right, I think at this point that wraps up our Evolve AT dashboard and asset browser functionality review. I'm going to go ahead and pass back to John Rhodes now, and thank you very much.
All right, super. Okay, so yeah, let's talk now about VS Code. So before we get into VS Code and our plugin and integration with VS Code that we've developed recently, I want to just get some thoughts on what are your favorite text editors out there. So let's do a poll on that. VS Code, Eclipse, two very popular ones, and if you're on the mainframe, ISPF is still used, I guess, quite heavily, probably, I would say. All right, let's see what you guys think here. Okay, so wow, interestingly, I guess most of you are using VS Code. That's tremendous. I think that's what we're seeing actually kind of mirrors the worldwide percentage, but I'll show you in a second. A lot of you using Eclipse, of course. I personally am more comfortable with Eclipse than VS Code, but I'm trying to get more familiar with VS Code because it's just a really nice environment. ISPF still being used. Got some people using Notepad, and good percentage of you using 20% or so using other. All right, that's super. So that's a good transition into that. Okay, let's talk about VS Code in particular. Now, VS Code really didn't hit my radar until last year sometime. I was a dyed-in-the-wool Eclipse user and all that, but it's gone from 0% when Microsoft launched it in 2015 to last year, 2021, 70% of the world's developers, engineers are using VS Code as their primary text editor. Really an amazing, amazing kind of run there, and I think it's showing no signs of stopping. Okay, so why is that? I think certainly as it's getting more popular on the IBM I and on the mainframe, I think it's the availability of some really high quality plugins that let you do your work quite effectively on the mainframe. So there's all kinds of support for editing different languages. Okay, you have both IBM and Broadcom with language support, and I think other vendors as well. Assembler, COBOL, PL1, all these are out there from different vendors. So that's one class of a plugin. And certainly if you look on the IBM I side, you'll see very similar. Now, IBM has a number of support for editing, AS400 data sets, code sets. They have their Merlin project and such. So both on the IBM I and IBM Z, there's just a lot of different plugins available. And I think that's one of the main reasons it's just gaining in popularity. So you can use VS Code for JavaScript and editing a web page and everything you do on your PC development or web development, as well as doing the back end, the COBOL and the assembler and data set editing and everything else. So there's just like a plethora of extensions out there for VS Code, and we're happy to contribute to that. We've recently developed an extension that will be on the marketplace fairly soon. So let me take a look at that. So what we want to do was take what we developed with CM Evolve IT and what you've seen with Roger's demonstration, and then bring that to the VS Code and Zowe Explorer environment. So if I'm in VS Code and I'm in Zowe Explorer, I'm looking at my mainframe data sets, maybe that's a JCL or a COBOL program or a copybook. But if I want to look in more detail into it and diagram it, I can just maybe right click on that and go right into my CM Evolve IT graphical environment and then get more details about that. Okay, so that's the intent. So let me show you VS Code and how that works. Okay, try to switch over here. So I got VS Code up here, and it's a very nice text editor. It's really basically what it is, a glorified text editor. It's got some really nice features in it due to the extensions. Really clean look. So if I look at my extensions I've installed here, I got a lot of extensions around mainframe and IBM I development, and then CRC Evolve IT extensions installed here. I can search for extensions on the marketplace, quickly find lots of different extensions for whatever I need to do, right? So I got some other ones installed, like DB2, and then like Zowe Explorer. So let me go to Zowe Explorer, and this is a way to see assets on my mainframe. So this is running against our mainframe here at CM First. And I can see things like JCL, for example. The extension will pull the data set, the JCL, from the mainframe into my local editor. I can make changes on here. I can even do a lot of things like I can even submit or compile directly from my VS Code interface. VS Code runs equally well on Apple and on Microsoft, so that's kind of a cool thing about it too. But also I can start to look at impact. So if I'm looking at, let me just pull up a data set. So I got a COBOL data set here. This is one of the ones that Roger may have been looking at. It's very similar anyway. It's around the letters process in our demo application. Okay, so here's my COBOL code. Okay, and then I can right click on this. We've extended the Zowe Explorer to add a right click context menu to diagram the impact of this data set. So if I click on this, I'll bring up a view directly in VS Code that basically is the same view as Roger showed you previously, but I can just access it more expeditiously from VS Code here. So I can do things like, okay, where is this program called from? Okay, I can see that I got, either I can go procedure, or I can go from the JCL. Let me just go from the JCL in this case. Just add all. Okay, so I can go backward. I can also go forward. Maybe I'm curious about what the data set impact is. What data sets does this program access? Okay, so I can also go forward and look at external file access and select some of these and these to my diagram. Okay, and I can do all the things that Roger previously showed you as far as layout. If I prefer to see this in vertical mode, I can do that, or breadth first certainly as well. Okay, and I can do things like export the diagram to JSON, CSV, Excel, PDF, or even draw.io if I want to make changes in kind of a Visio type environment. I can show the layout as a table. So I'm interested in just the impact. I can show all the nodes on the diagram as a layout in the table mode, see them in tabular fashion, export that. So everything that you saw before with our Seam Evolve IT web interface, you can see with this VS Code interface as well. So kind of a nice way to utilize your Seam Evolve IT functionality from within your day-to-day text editor if you're using VS Code. Okay, just mentioned you can do the same thing from JCL too. Here, if I'm starting at a job, a JCL there, I can go this direction and see what this JCL may be calling. Okay. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you on our new VS Code integration and plugin that will be on the marketplace fairly soon. I think this quarter or next quarter certainly. Let me pass things back to you, Roger, to talk about some other features we have in the works.
All right, thank you, John.
All right.
Take back control here, show my screen. All right, let's go ahead and bring up our slides and get down to where we are here. So just a couple of areas we wanted to cover with you today. Hopefully you're seeing my screen here, I think. And so, as John mentioned, our VS Code Zowe plugin, that'll be coming out soon. We're also currently working on Oracle and Teradata support within Evolve IT and some expanded DB2 support. And so those are coming. And as John mentioned, Evolve IT is a part of if you've got a really good CI/CD process and you want really strong ability to analyze, to provide that information to your users. You know, Evolve AT is really something you need in your DevOps environment. But to load that information, if you're using Git, and we certainly, again, can work with your legacy source code management, but we've got this GitLab integration. Let me just show a quick screenshot of that. So this is a really easy to use kind of project-based tool that lets you identify all the component types and build your projects and extract, excuse me, extract all the information from Git. So anyway, once you get this set up, then this will automatically run and extract all the information from your Git access. Lastly, if you are interested in trying out Evolve AT, go to our support portal. And actually, I noticed that that address is wrong. It should be support.cmfirstgroup.com. Go there, create an account, and look for the Evolve AT customer portal. Gives you a place where you can upload. Certainly send us an email at info@cmfirstgroup.com. Let us know, and we'll have a conversation and get some of your source code placed into Evolve AT in a cloud instance that you can play around with and learn about how to use it yourself. All right, thank you, John.
Okay, I think we're getting towards the end here. Show my camera again. So yeah, so just want to get your feedback on if you want to follow up on this presentation briefly, and then we're going to go into question and answer. So we have a number of questions already, but if you think we got time to answer as many as you guys want, just put them in the question app on go to webinar. If we don't get to all of them, we will certainly follow up to all the attendees with any questions that were asked and the answers. Okay, so please put your questions in now, and in the meantime, I will show our last poll. See what you guys think of thought of the presentation and the subject matter, and if it's interesting or not, and just kind of let us know on that. Okay, let's get right into questions. Okay, looks like they're mostly technical, Roger, so I'll be coming your way. Okay, first question was, we have a very large code base. Does your product scale? And also, how fast is the search and text searching that you demonstrated?
All right, good question. So yeah, so scale, obviously, most of our customers have very large systems. Some of them have a little bit smaller ones, but we've seen extremely large applications and sets of applications in Evolve AT. And so I'll mention, scale is not a problem. In fact, we're designed for a multi-server environment where needed, and can quickly put your source code into Evolve AT and prepare it for your users. So I will mention that since that came up, you can obviously implement this on site, or we can provide cloud implementation for you.
Anything on the speed question about the
Oh yeah, on performance. Yeah. So the good news about that Elasticsearch is that this is a pre-sorted search. So when you're looking for those items within your source code, it's already been pre-sorted. So it's a very, very fast search. It's going to give you access to the information, the field name, column name that you're looking for. And of course, you can select the different component types to make it even faster to limit the scope.
Okay, thanks. Next question here is, do these same views work with IBM ILE languages, COBOL, CL, RPG, C, etc.?
Yeah, actually, we haven't talked about that today, but we do support the IBM I, or the Power Systems We also, so we support COBOL RPG, and we support also, if you're users for CA2E, model-driven development, and also CA Plex, which of course are Broadcom products now, but we support all of those. Certainly reach out to us if you have that need.
Okay. Now, yeah, I just mentioned we don't support C at this time, but all,
Correct.
you know, the COBOL and RPG are supported.
Right. Correct.
Okay, next question. What is the dead paragraph count? Does that correspond to dead code?
Yes, it can. So there is a little bit of additional analysis you'll need to do, but the dead paragraph count will give you the information you need to understand exactly what code is not being accessed, is really maybe the best way to say it, right? So we have found where that was an error in the coding, where something should have been called, but yes, that those paragraphs will be not accessed by other parts of the code.
Okay, next question is, what is the price model for your software?
Mm-hmm. So that's a great question. So we want everybody that wants to use Evolve AT to have access. So rather than selling the tool on a per seat basis or something like that, we've really simplified the model over the years and made it really easy to say, hey, look at the number of COBOL programs that you have. We have a tiered approach. So depending on the number of programs, I think it's from 0 to 1,000, 1,000 to 3,000, and it goes up through the tiers, you know, until you may have, you know, 100,000 or more. But we have a tiered approach that makes the product very scalable. Everybody in your organization can use it, and you know, that way everybody has pricing that fits their need.
Okay. Next question is, what browsers do you support?
Yeah, so the two main browsers that we use are going to be Chrome and Edge. As most of you know, Internet Explorer is no longer supported. I'm sure Firefox would work if needed, and also I don't use it actually, but the Apple browser I'm sure would work also. We haven't. I don't use it personally, I should say, but yeah, all those browsers will work with Evolve AT, and so yeah, depending on the systems you're using, I personally like Chrome or Edge. I use both actually on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, that's the questions we have out there at this time. So I guess, yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. See the contact information out there, but if you have a, is that showing up, Roger?
Sorry?
I think it is. Is the contact information showing up? Yes. Okay,
yes,
good.
we saw it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it shows up.
to us at info@cfirstgroup.com or directly to Roger if you have any technical questions. And yeah, I hope this was valuable for all of y'all, and we look forward to talking further on this. We will be attending Common for the folks that are on, had IBM questions. We'll be attending that first part of October up in St. Louis. And I'm sure we'll probably be at the next Share as well. It's in Atlanta next spring. So I'd like to connect up with anyone that going to those shows. All right. Very good. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Take care.